Democratic congressional nominee Luke Bronin joins us now. Mr. Mayor, it's nice to speak to you. Congratulations on your win. This is now day one of the general election effort for you. What do these results from overnight say about voters' demand for change?
First of all, thanks, Peter, for having me on, and congratulations on the new show. Great to be with you. Look, I think the message that we heard loud and clear in Connecticut last night was that voters recognize, Democrats recognize that we have to bring a whole new energy to this fight as a Democratic Party. We got a president who's out of control, costs going through the roof, an economy that feels broken, and we need a Democratic Party that is clear and courageous and bold about what we're fighting for and who we're fighting for. And to do that well, we need to get some new voices and some stronger voices in our party.
So all of a sudden now you have to shift the focus from Representative Larson in that state to Amy Chai. She is going to be the Republican that you'll face off. She ran uncontested. What's your first priority in delivering the difference between your two positions?
Look, I think there's just a world of difference between anybody who is running on the Republican line to try to get a majority to continue to just lie down while Donald Trump tramples on our Constitution, tramples over Congress. We need a Congress that is willing to stand up, be a check on this dangerous president, hold him accountable, and then lay out an agenda for the American people that is really focused on the issues that people are feeling every day. I mean, the big three issues that I've been talking about are universal health care, housing that people can actually afford, bringing down electricity prices with a real shift to renewable energy so we can bring down costs and do the right thing for this climate and for our kids. You know, I think we have to be loud and clear that we recognize that when things feel really broken, the answer can't be small. We need to be bolder and clearer.
Mr. Mayor, one thing that struck me, and I was out on the campaign trail within the last several days, I was in Michigan in particular, and every Democrat I talked to, what I was hearing, and I think it's consistent in other places across the country, is they want to be voting for something, not just against Donald Trump right now. In particular, you made message of one of the things they want to be voting for, which is this change in terms of who is the deliverer of some of the message that they want right now. 58% of voters agree that aging lawmakers pose a major problem. That's a dramatic figure. Almost 6 in 10 Americans say as much. What do you think the Democratic Party needs to be for right now? What is like your 20-second elevator pitch?
Well, first, let me just say, this was a race that, it was about generational change, but I'm also bringing a range of experience to this work. I served in the Obama administration, was part of the team that helped to create the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to keep Americans from getting ripped off, served in the Navy and deployed to Afghanistan, and 8 years as the mayor of our capital city. And so bringing a range of perspectives that I think will matter down in Congress. But to me, the two big things we've got to be about as a party right now are stopping the damage and the out of control corruption that we're seeing from this president, and building an economy that actually works for working families in the middle class. And again, for me, that's healthcare, housing, electricity prices, and getting out there and building a movement outside the walls of the Capitol that actually makes those things possible. That's got to be the biggest mission right now.
Yeah, I think that's a message a lot of Democrats are trying to lean into right now. Let me ask you, though, if I can quickly about that topic, generational change, just because it is so resonant, I think, right now in this sort of climate. I mean, Donald Trump, the oldest president to ever serve, right? Joe Biden previously was the oldest president to ever serve. You have this message of generational change as well that was resonant. Will you make a mandatory retirement age for Congress a part of your general election pitch? Is that a message you hope to deliver moving forward?
I'm for term limits. I think that these are not meant to be lifetime jobs, that anytime you're doing the same thing for decade after decade, people get stuck in routines. They get complacent, and we can't afford that. I want to see more renewal. I want to see a Democratic Party that recognizes that we would be stronger if more of our leadership, saw that part of leadership is knowing when it's time to pass the torch. And I think that's a message our party as a whole needs to hear.
There has been, obviously, with the DOJ cuts that were so, for good reason, heavily criticized, there was so much institutional knowledge that without warning was thrown out the door here. Is there any worry about that the same should apply to lawmakers, the fear that the institutional knowledge goes with some of those senior lawmakers who leave?
Look, again, I'm bringing a range of experiences. I think it's important for our Democratic Party to have more veterans who can speak out about the recklessness about this war in Iran. I think it's important to have more mayors who understand what it means when the president slashes funding for gun violence prevention. I think those are experiences that matter to me far more than your knowledge of an institution that is a little bit broken and needs to be shaken up.
Yeah, that institutional knowledge only matters if the institution is working. And I think most Americans agree that Congress isn't working right now. I do want to lean into your military experience very quickly. The situation with Iran, the president just moments before we sat down here said that the U.S. controls the Strait of Hormuz right now. We have seen that that doesn't appear to be the case right now. Just based on your military experience, your former intelligence officer, what do you make of the way the U.S. has been handling this war now 5+ months in Iran?
I think this is one of the biggest self-inflicted wounds from a national security standpoint that we've seen in my lifetime, probably the biggest one since the war in Iraq. This president is reckless. He is dangerous. He's lying to himself if he believes what he's saying, and he's definitely lying to America. This war has put us in a far weaker position. It's damaged our economy. It's destabilized the world. It's burned up our munitions, which create a huge amount of vulnerability for our allies and ourselves. This president is the most reckless and irresponsible president on national security we've had in a long, long time.
If you win this fall, what's one thing you hope to deliver for your constituents that they may not have been able to receive under John Larson's terms in office?
Look, one of the issues that Congressman Larson made a focus for many years, which I respect, was a fight to protect Social Security. I'm going to be proud to carry on that fight. But I also want to see a Democratic Party that is focused on those things that I hear out there every day: healthcare, housing, costs across the board going up, stopping this president from doing more damage every day, both through the reckless war, which is driving up the cost of gas, and his across the board tariffs, which have driven up the cost of everything from groceries to construction. We've got to stop the damage. And then we have to, again, build a movement that makes it possible for us to make real change on things like healthcare, housing, and so much else.
Mr. Mayor Luke Bronin, it's a pleasure to see you. I appreciate you making time with us here on State of Play.
Thanks, Peter. Great to be with you.